The first thing I saw was fluorescent light, cold, sterile, humming above me like a judge waiting to sentence. My chest felt like it had caved in, ribs screaming, throat raw from the breathing tube that had been removed just hours before. I tried to sit up, failed, and whispered, "Did my parents come?" The nurse paused, clipboard halfway to the tray. Her eyes shifted, not pitying, not even surprised, just resigned. "No," she said gently. "No one from your family's checked in?" Silence followed, except for the machines beeping steadily beside me. I had been in a coma for 3 days, 3 days on the edge of life and death, and my own parents, not one phone call. She added, almost as an afterthought, "It was your neighbor, Mrs. Gomez. She's the one who found you in the car. She called 911, rode with you in the ambulance." Mrs. Gomez, 74 years old, nearly blind in one eye. She wasn't even related to me. I blinked against the pain, but it wasn't physical anymore. That kind of ache comes from being replaced by silence, from realizing, again, that I was never their priority. I grew up being the extra, the accidental child, the one who cost too much in inhalers, too much in tuition, too much in existing. My older brother Aiden could wreck 2 cars in a month and still get handed the keys to a third. When he dropped out of college to explore his passions, they called him brave. When I started selling art on Etsy, they called it cute. The hospital staff asked if I had insurance. I didn't. My art barely covered groceries, let alone ICU bills. They asked if someone, anyone, could help. I gave them my dad's number. The next day, a social worker came in shaking her head. He said, and I quote, "She always wanted to be independent. Let her figure it out." Let me figure out $47,000 in emergency care, alone, in a paper-thin gown with a spine fracture and no insurance. That night, as the morphine wore off, something inside me cracked, or maybe it woke up. I decided then, if I survived this, they'd never get a single drop from me again. When I was finally discharged 2 weeks later, I walked with a cane, was thousands in debt, and looked like a shadow of myself. I returned to my tiny studio apartment, a 400-square-foot box I'd prepaid 6 months for. I ate instant oatmeal. I avoided mirrors. I taught myself how to stand without crying. And just when I thought the universe was finished kicking me, a letter arrived from a law firm, the kind of envelope you usually ignore, assuming it's more bad news. But inside was a name I hadn't heard in years, Eleanor Carter, my great-aunt. I'd met her twice, once at a wedding, once at a funeral, but she had apparently been following me online, quietly watching, quietly believing. She had passed away, and she had left everything to me, not just a check, a vineyard in Napa, 3 rental homes, over $3 million in investments, and a letter, handwritten. One sentence that gutted me: "To the only one in this family who knows what pain feels like, and never turned cold. Use this to heal, build your legacy, leave the rest behind." I held that letter like a lifeline, like a map drawn in blood. Because for the first time in my life, someone had seen me, and left me something more than silence. But I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Not even Aiden. Not my parents. They'd abandoned me at the hospital. They didn't know it yet, but I was about to return the favor. Legally, quietly, and irrevocably. If you've ever been left behind after giving your all, type 1. You're not invisible. The knock on the door came just as I was finishing my tea, hand-rolled jasmine leaves from Kyoto, steeped in a porcelain set my aunt had imported from France. I wasn't expecting guests, and certainly not them. I opened the door to find my parents standing there like actors who'd missed the first half of the play, but still wanted applause. My father's eyes scanned the marble floor, the hand-painted walls. "Whose place is this?" he asked, a little too sharp to sound casual. I smiled. "Mine. Can I help you?" They stepped inside uninvited. My mother's perfume was the same. It hit like an old bruise. "We were just worried," she said, in a tone as thin as tissue. "We heard from Aiden that you've been keeping to yourself. You look great, sweetie. That dress, is it designer?" I didn't answer. I walked to the kitchen, poured tea into delicate gold-rimmed cups, and placed them gently on the glass table. It clinked like a warning bell. My father went straight to the point. We heard about Eleanor. Such a sweet woman, my mother added quickly. Always liked you. We assumed, well, you know, she had no kids, and we were her closest relatives after you. He leaned forward. So maybe you can just transfer our share. A clean split. Family helping family. That word, family, burned hotter than the tea in my hand. I sat back in silence, watching the steam swirl between us. No apology, no, how are you feeling? No acknowledgement that they left me to die alone in a hospital bed. Just greed, dressed in polite tones. You didn't call. You didn't visit. I could have been buried, and you wouldn't have known, I said slowly. My father scoffed. Don't be dramatic. We raised you. We sacrificed for you. You owe us. Owe, I echoed. You're not going to play victim forever, Emily, my mother snapped. You got lucky. Eleanor left you something. Don't let it go to your head. That's when I stood up, calmly, quietly. I walked to the fireplace, pulled out the original letter Eleanor had written, the one with the ink-stained corners and her signature that still smelled faintly of lavender. I handed it to my mother. She didn't leave crumbs. She left everything. To me, no splits, no debates. Their smiles vanished. And just so you know, I added, voice like glass, I already sold her stocks. I bought a building downtown. My mother narrowed her eyes. What building? The one that houses Gallery 15. My father blinked. That art place you kept crying about? I nodded. I own it now, and I fired Karen. Their friend. My enemy. The woman who once laughed when I brought in my portfolio and said it looked like Pinterest with a mood disorder. I leaned in. She never liked me. Now she's unemployed. They stood up, furious. You're going to regret this when Aiden inherits the family house and everything, my father spat. Don't come crawling back. I smiled. Oh, I'm not crawling anywhere. And the house? I tilted my head. You might want to check who owns that loan. He paled just slightly. They left with their mouths tight and their egos bleeding. I stood at the doorway long after they were gone, tea still warm in my hand, because power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's brewed slowly and served cold. If you've ever been dismissed after everything you gave, type 2. Some betrayals are quiet, but they echo for years. The voicemail came at 6:12 a.m. Aiden, my golden boy brother, sounded tired for once. Hey, just a heads up. Mom and Dad are freaking out. Something about the house, overdue taxes, or a bank thing? Not my circus. I'm moving in with Claire anyway. Thought you should know. I didn't need the warning. I had signed the foreclosure paperwork 3 days ago. What Aiden didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the house they were scrambling to save had long stopped belonging to them. The second mortgage they'd taken 5 years ago to fund one of Aiden's failed startups, it hadn't disappeared into the void of some faceless institution. It had ended up in a private lending trust. My trust. Quietly acquired through one of Aunt Eleanor's legacy investment arms. I didn't just inherit wealth, I inherited leverage. I arrived just as the movers did. Their once proud 2-story home, white shutters, overgrown hedges, stood there like a memory trying to pretend it hadn't rotted inside. My father was on the lawn, red-faced and shouting at the moving crew like they were the enemy. My mother sat on the porch steps, dabbing at her eyes like she was waiting for someone to hand her a camera crew. They didn't see me until I pulled up in my charcoal gray electric SUV and stepped out in a tailored navy blue suit. My father's eyes narrowed. You, he hissed. What the hell are you doing here? I held up a white envelope. This is your official notice. The deed is now held by a charitable trust under my name. The house will be converted into a shelter for runaway girls. My mother's mouth dropped open. You're evicting us? She whispered. No, I said calmly. The trust is. I'm just the signature. You can't do this, my father barked. This is our home. It was, I replied, until you used it as collateral and forgot to pay it back. I pointed toward the end of the block. A van had just pulled up. A group of girls stepped out, led by a social worker. Some with backpacks, one holding a baby, all with that wide-eyed, too old for their age stare I knew too well. My voice softened. They're moving in today, girls like the one you left behind. My mother stood, panic setting in. You're doing this out of spite. I stepped closer. No, I'm doing this out of survival. You raised me in a house where love had strings and silence was the currency. I'm cutting those strings. You'll regret this, my father roared. I looked him in the eye. No, you will, when the world sees what you threw away. They left that day with nothing but plastic garbage bags and the weight of a daughter they could no longer manipulate. I stood by the gate, watching them go, the same gate I had once been pushed out of crying. Weeks later, the shelter opened. Donors arrived. Reporters covered the ribbon cutting. We named it Eleanor House, in honor of the woman who had believed in me before I even believed in myself. Inside the mailbox that evening was a plain envelope. No return address. Just a photo, me, unconscious in a hospital bed, and a note from a retired nurse. Your parents stayed 5 minutes. I stayed the whole night. I just wanted you to know. You were never truly alone. I cried, not for what I'd lost, but for what I'd reclaimed, my voice, my story, my legacy. And as for my parents, they were never the ending. They were just the prologue. If you've ever had to build yourself back up from nothing, type 3. Your healing is the loudest story you'll ever tell.